New, aspiring entrepreneurs, experienced business owners, welcome to Stahls TV, where our whole goal is to help decorators succeed in their business. That's sort of our mantra for Stahls TV. That's how we craft all the presentations. And as we kind of move through Stahls TV in this initiative, we've been doing a lot of sort of mechanical how-to videos showing you specifically how to do certain decoration processes, tips, techniques, and trends through decoration tutorials. And something that we like to do with our new studio here is also talk more about the business side of things. And so today's class is more on the business side of things, where we hope we'll be able to share the challenges that any business that's entering the decoration world faces. And for those of you that are experienced in business, you'll have kind of ridden some of these challenges and rough terrain, and hopefully be able to share some insight as well into how you've overcome these challenges, and even get perspective on, if you're still facing these challenges, how to adapt in your business. So if we switch back over to the PowerPoint, the first slide that I have here kind of talks about the fundamental of a business in general. Now, of course, we all start businesses for different reasons. Some for just satisfaction, some to leave a legacy behind, or to do some sort of good work, or maybe leave something to your kids. We all have a vision when we go to start a business, but ultimately, in order to experience long-term success in business, cash flow is important. So cash flow is what it starts with. You have to have some sort of cash to start a business, and cash flow is kind of what it ends with. If there is a lack of cash flow, ultimately you won't be able to keep the doors of your business open. And we've read some different stats over the years, and unfortunately 8 out of 10 businesses fail within the first 18 months. So for those of you that have been in business longer than that, congratulations in advance, and we wish you continued success. And those of you that are less than a year or less than 18 months or just starting, hopefully we'll be able to share some tips and tricks here to kind of advance you to the next level. So there's one additional poll I want to launch before we talk about how we can maintain cash flow and profit. And I really just want perspective on what type of business you all are in. So we'll launch this, and this is our last poll for today, so you won't have to answer any more questions. All right, we can go ahead and close that off. And if you can just share the results with me.
58% are part-time home businesses, 21% full-time home businesses, and 21% full-time dedicated location.
Okay, so good. Those are a pretty good mix. A lot of part-timers and a fair amount of full-timers as well, either at home or with a brick-and-mortar location, whether that's retail storefront or production. So let's dive right into the presentation. And so the next slide that I want to show you is what I view as one of the top challenges for startup decorators, and that's really selecting the proper print technology. So it's really easy to kind of see the trade magazines, the advertisements, the articles being penned, or even walk through a trade show and hear the buzzwords, such as "this is the latest and greatest print technique," and really see the appeal of it, and ultimately invest in print technology that maybe doesn't fit your business. So one of the first tips that I want to give you up front in comments is that your business plan shouldn't be designed based around what print technology you own or what the latest and greatest is. Basically, you should first establish your business plan, and then you should seek out print technology to support that plan. And so every print technology has different pros and cons, and that's one of the main things we try to do here at Stahls TV, is educate you on the real-life pros and cons of each technique and kind of where it's at, what it works for, and where it's going. And so I don't want you to be fooled and think that one size fits all when it comes to print technology. The example that I've given on the screen here is like fitting a square peg into a round hole. So if we have a business strategy, or we wish to start an athletic apparel company that's going to center around team uniforms and performance fabrics and hard goods, we probably wouldn't want to invest a huge amount of cash into a print technology such as direct garment printing, because this really isn't going to serve the customer base that we're trying to go after. So ultimately, before you even start looking at print technology, I recommend kind of starting with a checklist and understanding the goals of your business and the customer. So a checklist may look like this. I'll just spout off a few questions, and you can add to this if you're writing notes down. So number one is, what items do you want to decorate? Of course, with what items you want to decorate, you also want to understand what fabrics they're comprised of. One key when selecting a print technology is understanding what your artwork looks like and if that technology is capable of reproducing your artwork. There's a huge difference between technology that can do basic designs like name and numbers and one that can do full color fills and gradients and high detail. So as you step into considering a print technology or a collection of technologies, you'll want to have this sort of checklist so you can make sure that you're truly going to be able to serve the customers that your sales strategy is designed around. Some other key questions are, what quantities do you want to serve? And basically, how much money will you need to make per piece? Because there's different sort of profit opportunities for different blanks and wearables, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as far as costing goes. And then really, the last thing you want to look for is throughput. So you really want to understand, is this single device, in the case of a direct-to-garment printer, going to be able to produce enough garments per day at the profit margin or the profit per piece that I'm going to make to really reach my revenue goals and deliver cash flow back to the business. So you need to look at the return on investment on each device and make sure your print technology investment services your business plan, not the other way around. Any questions or comments so far on any of those things? No? Okay. So I'm moving over to the next slide. The number two challenge that we see with startup decorators is really finding customers. A lot of us kind of become infatuated with researching equipment and what equipment should I buy, what's the difference between this heat presses versus the next, or this vinyl cutter versus this vinyl cutter. And really, I'd almost say you want to have the right technology and good quality stuff, but we overinvest time often in selecting the device and basically debating between $100 or $200 on a piece of equipment with a vendor, instead of just making a sound investment, an educated investment, and really spending the majority of your time up front on how will I find customers. If you don't have a plan to find customers, ultimately that equipment isn't going to be producing anything for you anyways. So I put on the screen there, if you build it, they will come, and otherwise. This is kind of what we see a lot with decorators, spending a lot of time, a lot of money, either acquiring a storefront or perhaps launching a website, coming up with their booth for on-site printing. Ultimately, these are all good things to do, but you need to have a true strategy on how you will attract customers to that particular location, whether it's websites, brick and mortar, whatever it might be. So some ways to find customers, and there's a huge list that falls underneath these, but you need to think about advertising, whether or not you will execute an advertising or a marketing plan in print or web or both, and how that will look. One thing I definitely recommend you do is, if you have a website, of course you need to research things like Google AdWords, which will allow you to actually find customers at the point of search. So when they're searching, you're basically creating keyword campaigns and attracting them to your website to get that sort of traffic level. Of course, the website needs to be right to convert, but at least you're bringing traffic in. Some other ways are through Facebook advertising, perhaps YouTube videos, where you can sort of leapfrog the search results with a video result for your particular offering. And there are just a variety of ways to advertise on the web. Where are your customers? Who is your ideal customer? So in order to find a customer, you need to first define who is my customer and where are they. For instance, if we're talking about a particular customer base that we're going after. Let's say we have an infant or baby's apparel line where we're decorating onesies and bibs and these sorts of things. Obviously, the person making the buying decision for those would be moms. So where on the internet, where in my community am I going to find this ideal customer that can make the decision? And from a sort of web perspective, it may make sense to go out and search out different moms groups and forums and different places that moms are already participating in active discussion and begin to do advertising or content creation there. So what I mean, if there's a groups maybe where moms are talking about a particular topic related to their children, whether that's health or any number of things, we can put a banner ad on that forum. We can engage on that forum. We can start to advertise or try to draw customers in from that existing community. So define who your customer is, and ultimately brainstorm a plan to find them. So that's a little bit about advertising. Next, one of the easiest ways to find customers is through networking, referrals, and ultimately partnerships or teaming up. So I'll go with the same example here where we're talking about moms and making buying decision for a baby apparel line or a toddler apparel line, and we start to team up. So who is already serving these folks in your community? Is there any way that I can somehow get my decorated apparel line placed in a boutique or some other place within the community that serves this group? So maybe there's a store or something that focuses on these things. Perhaps I can even develop a plan where if they sell my decorated apparel or give my business cards away or turn people over to my line, they get a commission or they make some sort of profit. So figuring out who your customers are, finding ways you can advertise to them where they are, and also finding ways that you can partner up and network to ultimately generate a nice source of referrals. That is one of the challenges, is finding customers, and those are just some ideas on how to fix it. Any questions yet, Jody? All right, you guys are quiet, but that's okay. Okay, one other way to find customers is actually prospecting. And this point is lost on a lot of folks because a lot of people are afraid of that device that's hanging there on the left side of your screen, the telephone. Okay, and I think the root cause of why we're afraid of the telephone is it's a lot more comfortable to hide behind an email. There's a lot less direct rejection in that sort of interaction with your target customers. So when you start to talk about prospecting, we'll switch gears a little bit. Let's say we have a product and our target customer is dance schools. Okay, so when we talk about decorating for dance schools, it's pretty easy to build a list of dance schools in your area. All you need to do is go to a website such as Google Maps for whatever zip code that you want to look in or region you want to look in. Type in the keyword dance schools, and all of a sudden you're populating a list of schools, and you're building this list. Okay, so once you start to prospect and build these lists of dance schools, or go through even the phone book and look at a list, there's all these ways to build a list of prospects. That's called prospecting. You need to do it in your business. Go and find your customers. How often do they get called on by somebody that does what you do? And then it comes to time to pick up the phone. So yes, I can devise a sample. I can send it out to a dance school, and I think that's a great thing to do. I can even come up with an email and email them through their website or through their Facebook page and send them a message. Often that's enough to get a response, but your customer is busy. So sometimes you need to interrupt their day with a phone call. I'm not saying you just reach out and make a phone call first, although some people do that and are really comfortable doing that. Can be a good idea, but maybe we send the sample, and maybe we send an email so at least they know who I am, and then I have some sort of timing where I follow up with the phone call. A lot of folks will write articles about cold calling's dead and you should be getting more referrals, but the reality is phone calls and sales calls, whether that's by email or the telephone, is still a very viable way of drumming up business and kind of separating yourself from the pack, as not a lot of people are doing that. So one way to get over the fear of rejection on the phone call, let's just assume up front, when you call and interrupt the day of this dance school instructor or owner, we're probably not going to realize a sale on the first call. So you should set a different goal and a different expectation for your close. The ultimate goal at the end of the road, of course, is to realize a sale. But the goal of this call, what is it? So I call that an advance when we're coaching our sales teams here. You know, in a typical advance for us when we're calling on you folks, our customers, is to try to get a sample into your hands. We know that if you can experience the product, you might like it, and odds are when we follow up, you're going to know who we are, and you might be interested in purchasing that product based off us giving you a sample, based on the timing of the thing, and when you're ready to actually do this. So structure your offer and schedule in advance that's not going to leave you completely rejected on every call. So that advance can be sending a sample of a decorated good with their logo or with a general logo. That advance can be, if they're local to you, getting an appointment with them where you can actually go out or have a sales rep go out and show them what you have to offer. So don't give up on the phone. Make sure that that is one of the ways you follow up and find customers.
Josh has a question.
There's a question, go for it.
Should we try to develop a ready-made product line rather than concentrating on personalization? If so, any suggestions for doing that?
Okay, so should we develop a ready-made product line? So typically, it depends on your business. So one of the key things, and it's actually, I think, my last slide, is developing a business plan. You have to really take a look at your business and figure out what types of sales you want to target and how much money they make you. So the problem with just custom graphics is a lot of times the customer doesn't have the creativity in order to know exactly what they want at the moment you're talking to them. But I think it's all about sparking an idea for them. So specifically, I don't think you should desert customization and customizing graphics and apparel versus a pre-printed branded line. I think you'll have more success telling a customer, hey, here's what we've done for 5 stores like you, and we can customize these looks specifically for you. So maybe if I'm calling a dance school, I can say, here's an example of 5 trendy pieces we've done for other dance schools. Even if we haven't done them, I can come up with looks. Here's what we can create. Now let us customize something specifically for you. Would you be interested in running a sale if we could show you looks specifically for your school like this? Hopefully that answers the question. You can feel free to follow up with a follow-up question if not. Okay, so the next slide kind of plays into that. And this is one of my favorite stories, and we actually use it here quite a bit when we're thinking of product offering and sales strategy, is just lost sales by selection. So a lot of folks, this kind of relates back to the question that was just asked as well, a lot of folks will try to be everything to everybody and offer every decorating technique possible. So we talked about cash flow up front. The reality is, if you want to have selection, and the picture on the screen is actually a jelly or jam at a store, if you want to have selection, it's going to come at a price. So, meaning, particularly for decorating businesses, you're going to have the back-end technology and equipment to be able to offer the selection and graphics and print all of these looks. So you have to determine, am I able to print anything for anybody? Is that the goal of my business? And then secondly, when it comes to the actual wearable item itself, whether that's, if I want to have t-shirts and 36 colors and performance wear and jackets and all of that, it's not that I can't find a local vendor to supply that to me, but ultimately it still may be diminishing returns if I go and say, here customer, here's all of this stuff that you can pick from, and ultimately it's just going to confuse them. So I want to share the results of an actual study that was done by a professor at Columbia University and Stanford University. This is a really famous study on selection. Basically, they got permission from a grocery store in California to go and set up displays of jam, okay, or jelly. In this study, they set up 2 displays. Okay, they had a researcher that was basically running the displays that was disguised as an employee, logging the information, and the sort of booth graphic or the display graphic was simple. It was inviting customers to come and try these jams. Okay, and there were 2 major differences between the 2 displays. Display 1 had a table that featured 24 different styles of jam. Display 2 had a table that featured 6 different styles of jam. Now these were done on different days or later in the day, and the question was, which display performed the best? Okay, so First, display number 1 that had more selection actually had 60% of the people who pass by stop in the booth. Okay, so that's a pretty high percentage. Display number 2 actually performed a little poorer than that. It only had 40% of the people who pass by stop in the booth. So what would you conclude by knowing that? You'd probably conclude that we can stop more people with more selection. We probably have something that's going to appeal to more folks, and the display itself is probably more compelling for people to stop. Okay, that's all cool, but here's where the problem is. The question is, the goal, the end goal at the end of the road is what? For the purchase to happen, for them to actually buy. That's the goal. It's not them stopping and looking, it's buying. Okay, so the 30% of the people who stopped in the limited choice booth purchased at least 1 jar of jam. Okay, this is the one that kind of knocked me off my seat. By contrast, only 3% of the people, of the 60% of people that stopped in the extensive choice booth, purchased. Okay, so what does that tell us? I mean, there was follow-up studies done on this, but basically it would suggest that more choices, although it appears desirable, doesn't necessarily result in a higher close ratio or more sales. Because what can happen is a customer just becomes so overloaded with choices that ultimately they never conclude, they never purchase. So as you're structuring your sales offer and going out on a sales pitch for a customer, instead of showing all of these things that you can do and all these different logo choices and color choices and garment choices, why not simplify? Here's a good, here's a better, here's a best. From a garment perspective, and here's 2 choices on artwork. You know, come up with whatever it is. You can translate this to your e-commerce site, to your retail store, whatever it is, for on-site printing. All of this can be translated to say, we want to have a little bit of selection so a customer can make the choice, but ultimately we want to drive simplicity into the process so the customer always concludes in a choice, or at least a higher percentage of the time. Because it's really tough to make decisions, and maybe they'll delay the purchase if there's too much selection. So I thought that was a pretty interesting study. The follow-up to that, I won't go into too deep, but basically there was another class at Stanford University, and basically they offered essay topics for extra credit. So some students were offered 30 different topics, others were offered 6. So once again, a difference in selection. And 74% of the students with the 6 topics, the limited choice, turned in an essay. Only 60% of those with 30 essays to choose from turned in an essay. So once again, a higher close ratio because the students were able to make a decision to actually do the work and pick a topic probably easier than the extended choice. Any questions? All right. So the next one that I want to talk about is probably, I think we all would agree, this is where a lot of new shops especially have a lot of issues, and that is getting cost correct. So I put here bad pricing, or bad costing, you could even say, is an epidemic that leads to out of business, or ultimately it's a disease that leads to death of your business. So when you talk about getting costing correct, this is somewhere you're going to have to invest time. We're not going to be able to do this whole thing in an hour class here in this session on Stahls TV, but I think it's important for everybody to realize that there are different components that go into calculating costs. So there is your product cost. In the case of transfers, it's the cost of a transfer, it's the cost of the garment. There's the labor, and there is overhead at a minimum. Those are your 3 major components. So a lot of people fail at different parts of this process. So when you talk about product costs, a lot of people fail to calculate freight into their product costs because it varies based on order, and sometimes it's too challenging to calculate. So you want to calculate landed cost of your particular product, whether that's your blank shirt or your screen printed transfer, your decoration. You want to make sure it's landed cost. And really, you need to consider that when you're pricing too, because if somebody orders 1 shirt and it's not a stock shirt for you, you're going to have X amount of freight to bring that in. And for that's one of the reasons why I always tell people you want to have selection, but you want to limit your vendors so you can gang up those single piece or low quantities orders altogether and order them together to save on freight. But landed product cost is important, and labor. Pay yourself. Place some value on the work that you do. And I'm talking about labor, actually production labor and art labor. There is a cost, typically, to create artwork or virtual samples and send them to people. So make sure that's rolled up into the cost equation somewhere. So when you talk about labor cost, you want to make sure you pay yourself at every piece of the process. And overhead, of course, for those of you working part-time at home or even full-time at home, there's still overhead and expense. So try to build that into your cost up front, especially if you ever want to move into a storefront location. You definitely may want to even include a little bit beefier overhead to one day get to your goal of having a storefront, because ultimately you don't want to move into your storefront and have to raise all your prices on the whole customer base that you've built. They're not going to get that, okay? It's a better option to do the right pricing up front, get those customers accustomed to paying these prices, and when you move into your storefront, there's really no change other than your cost actually just goes up a bit. So those are some things. I see there's a question. Jody's picking up her mic here.
Yes. Can you give them an average cost for one t-shirt?
So an average cost for one t-shirt is tough because there can be so many print techniques on it. So, you know, if we're talking about a blank t-shirt, they typically run between $2 and $3 a piece, depending on the month of the year and the cost of cotton and the promotions and the color. So let's say $2 to $3 for a t-shirt. Depends on the freight of it coming in. That's what a lot of people miss. So if it's a single t-shirt, probably going to overpay on freight. Also, it depends on the decoration and the labor it takes to make it. So you can't really give a cost on one t-shirt without understanding all the components of it. Ultimately, if we were producing one t-shirt with CAD cut and assuming that it was a stock t-shirt with little freight, you know, we can cut a graphic, get it to that shirt, and get it completed for around $7 or $8, I would say, for an average full front graphic with a couple minutes to weed, a couple minutes to press. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. With screen printing, you know, if we're doing 100 shirts, the cost goes down much lower. Doesn't mean screen printing's better. It's all about your business plan, the customer you want to serve, the type of artwork, and ultimately translating to a technology. I wish it were that simple, but you know, there's planning that has to go into it. Okay, so getting cost correct is key. We do have Stahls TV classes that are all about calculating costs and selling prices that are full hour-and-a-half classes with cost calculator tools. So you can log in to stahlstv.com under our broadcast archive and get a lot of that info if you want to dive in deeper there to make sure you get your cost and your pricing correct. Now, of course, you're telling me about all these costs, and basically you don't understand my area, Josh. That's going to price me out of the market, and I'm not going to be able to sell shirts. Actually, it's I don't know if she's on today, but I talked to a lady at the trade show last week in Arlington, and you know, she knew the people, so she wanted to do them a favor, but I asked her how much profit she was making per shirt when she was all in, and she said, I think $1. Okay? That's way too low. So competitive pricing, fighting competitors that, you know, often just really don't understand pricing. It's not that they're trying to chop your legs out on pricing. Maybe they are, but you know, a lot of people don't understand everything that goes into cost, so you have this sort of low cost offering in your neighborhood or your area or even online, and you have to find some way to keep up with this competition. And so this is one of the top challenges of startup decorators and even the folks that have been in business for 7, 8 years is fighting competition. It never goes away in any industry. Ultimately, there are people with lower overhead that are operating part-time, you know, out of a spare bedroom, and one of their advantages is low overhead and pricing. But there is ultimately other ways to fight competition. And what I would say is I read a book one time. It was called The Blue Ocean Strategy. If you've never read that before, you should pick it up. It's a really interesting read. And it was based on a lot of studies done across competitive pricing and new markets and long-term success of businesses. But basically, what it meant is that a commodity-based market equals competition. So they referred to it in the book as a red ocean. So think about it, you know, sharks eating sharks, basically. Bloody waters, there's a lot of price wars, there's a lot of competition, And ultimately, this is a competitive area that you really need to have your stuff together to excel in. And you probably need to have deep pockets because you're probably going to have some loss leaders as far as pricing, and really have a strategy to compete in this red ocean. So when people jump into business and say, I want to print t-shirts, you want to make sure that your connections are deep so you can sell a lot of t-shirts, because just to say I want to print t-shirts and walk to your local school, there's a lot of people vying for that business. That's red ocean type of business where there's a lot of different parents that are in the decorating world. And there's low cost to entry, as we know with the heat press. Doesn't make it a bad business, but you just have to be prepared to participate there and know that the margins and the profit per piece isn't going to be optimal. So in contrast, there's the blue ocean. Okay, this is uncontested market space. It's not necessarily a niche market space, but it's new. Meaning, when I start to sit down and think about starting my business, or even if I'm 7 years in business and I think about, man, how am I going to improve my margins? How am I going to grow this thing? And starting a new project or initiative, you want to think about a space that you can be in sort of alone or with few competitors and excel in. And so there's some ways to do this. I mean, how many people are selling a basic t-shirt to the local school? It's not that I can't sell to a local school, but maybe I want to sell an upgraded line. So I'm going to invest some time up front to get boutique style blanks or stuff that's a lot more fashionable and a lot more trendy. And I'm going to invest money in a print technology or a transfer technology or a partner that I can outsource to that's going to upgrade my looks to a different level from a decoration standpoint. So instead of just showing basic CAD cut, I'm going to show glitter. Or maybe since glitter, I don't want to say it's saturated, but a lot more people are printing with glitter, maybe instead of glitter, I'm going to print with lace glitter or sequins or whatever it might be. Come up with something unique that others can't compete with. You don't have to be everything to everybody. Find a business that makes good money and go and find more customers for that specific type of decoration and look that you do. That can yield a lot more profitable results, and you won't be wasting your heat press capacity and your time. For your small businesses, your time is limited. You probably do it all. You won't be wasting your time printing shirts that make you $1 in profit per piece. We want to print the $10 and $15 per piece profit opportunities. So you can create blue oceans with that sort of market with upgraded or boutique looks. You can create sort of blue oceans with design style if you choose to go a different route and invest money in artists and have the absolute most cutting edge art that somebody entering it can't touch. You can do it through unique items. So if everybody's selling the t-shirts, I could go in there and my whole business could be heat printing shoes. It can be heat printing pop-up tent for events. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways that you can have sort of a solid sales strategy that's built around something that's not so competitive. Any questions on that?
You have 2 questions. Do I add product, labor, freight, and overhead for the price of a shirt and then charge extra for the artwork per hour?
Okay, so as far back to the pricing one, which was the previous slide, good question. So that's the way I typically like to do it, is like you have your product, labor, and overhead cost, and then I break out my art fee per half hour is a good thing, because often it'll take less than a half hour, especially if you're plugged in to some design tools like from Transfer Express, or you have another graphic arts program that has templated stuff that you can work with. So I always like to establish a rate per half hour, and then of course if they provide production ready art, they don't have the art fee in there at all.
One more. Cost, is it a great way to charge? So cost times 2 is a great way to charge customers.
Okay, so cost times 2, there's been a lot of debate on the way to set prices. I personally am an advocate of profit per piece, because here's the difference. So if you go into something like cost times 2, let's say that t-shirt, let's say for some reason you can make it for $4, which is totally possible. You may just be taking the cost of that t-shirt and doubling it, selling it for $8, you're only making $4 per piece. Okay, in reality, that t-shirt may be able to yield, by knowing your customer and your market, may be able to yield a $15 price point. Okay, so you might be shortchanging yourself by $7 in profit on every shirt, by doing cost times 2. So what I always like to do, whether it's heat press labor, embroidery labor, screen printing, whatever, I like to set, I know my throughput, and I like to set a minimum profit per piece. So in order for me to lock that heat press down and decorate a garment, I want to make X. For some businesses that do like the high-end bling stuff, that may be as high as $10, $15. Okay, for some businesses that have standard decoration, it may be 5 to 7. But you can always adjust up from there, but there's a minimum profit per piece that I want to make to basically run that heat press, because otherwise I can leave some capacity open for customers that are willing to pay that profit per piece, and I can go find more customers like that. Now, of course, there's always the reverse. If you're sitting there just trying to find business and the heat press isn't working, I wouldn't say it's a price issue. You shouldn't cut your prices. I'd say you should invest more into rethinking your business, rethinking your sales strategy, and how you find customers, because it sounds like a sales and a marketing problem to me, not necessarily a pricing issue. Okay? All right, so let's go on to the next slide. So this is one of my favorite slides, is too many hats. All right, one of the problems of a startup decorator, any entrepreneur, often is too many hats. And it can be too many hats for a lot of reasons. One is because you could be so particular about the quality of work that you do personally. And you know, even in management, you have this issues, is just feeling comfortable delegating. Okay? So as you're starting your business, of course, if you have one person or 1 or 2 people, you're trying to do sales, you're trying to do marketing, you're doing production, you're doing finance, you're doing design. You need to find a way to delegate some of these tasks. Now, you may not be at a point in your business when you're ready to hire. Now, I encourage all businesses to try to get to that point sooner than later. It's going to help you scale and get over the hump. But you may be at a point in your business where you need to outsource some part of the process. So yeah, you can outsource sales and work through independent reps and try to get a commission-only structure. You can outsource production. Perhaps we can establish a rate with another local decorator. Maybe I don't even need to buy a screen printing equipment. I can find somebody that can handle that production for me, where I can focus on marketing and selling the results. So the first thing you need to do is look at these major disciplines, and you can add to this, and figure out, what do I do best? Rank yourself in these disciplines, because ultimately, or what do I enjoy most and do best? Where do you want to spend your time as the business owner, running the business? What do you want to do? Now, if you want to manage all these components, I think that's the ultimate goal and the dream, where you wouldn't have to focus just on one. But as you start, you want to be a little bit cash flow sensitive and not drive your wages through the roof. So I think you're going to want to do one of these things, and you want to pick it and then kind of go from there. And one of the things you need to include in your business plan is sort of a talent acquisition strategy. So just because, and I mean, I know the goal of a lot of businesses is to build something for their family, but just because you have family or kids or brothers or sisters, whatever it might be, an aunt and uncle that needs a job, doesn't mean that that's the right fit to do sales for your business. Doesn't mean that that's the right fit to do finance work for your business. So I always like to create the positions independent of the people. If you do it the other way around and create positions for the people, ultimately you may have a failing business. So structure the positions that you'll need in your company and the skill sets that will be required, sort of the job responsibilities for that position, and then ultimately establish a plan to fill those positions. If one of your family members fits one of them and you can scale like that, that's great. That's up to you. That's your call. But I would prefer to structure the positions, create a strategy long-term to fill these with the best possible employee I can hire or the best possible company that I can outsource to. And then the only other sort of notes I had here is, of course, where should you be focusing your time? And also, I think it's important to hire your first employee or perhaps even a partner with some equity in the business, so you at least have somebody to vet your ideas with and somebody to help you before you burn out. I mean, I like weeding heat transfer film as much as the next guy, but I'm not sure I want to be up till, you know, late nights all the time doing production. My time may be better spent selling if that's my skill set. So don't limit your business's potential by not delegating and trying to keep control of everything. Questions on that? Quiet group. Okay. So obviously there's a lot of challenges. The good news is you're all entrepreneurs for a reason, or aspiring entrepreneurs. So you have a mission, you have a purpose, you have a gut feeling about the way that things should be done. I think it's just great to walk in with eyes wide open into the decorating world to solve some of these issues and know where to go. And like I said up front, Stahls TV is a source that we've created specifically for you to help you succeed in your business. Now, it's not where we want it to be yet as far as content, but it's an evolving process and we're getting there. So there's a ton of videos to help on the production side now, and we're working to build more decorating disciplines into that. We're also working to build more content from a sales, marketing, finance, and design perspective. So it'll change a lot and kind of develop over the next year or so. So ultimately, it all starts with the plan, and we'll go back to where we started. It's cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. So what that means, you need to figure out a way to find customers that are going to generate profitable sales, which we talked about. You need to have a pricing strategy in the proper market that generates profit. You need to make sure you have the right print technology for the customers you want to reach and what you create. You also want to analyze your customer acquisition cost and know how much it costs you to get a customer and incorporate that into your pricing. You really want to stay lean up front. I recommend staying lean up front. Ultimately, overhead can be a very expensive thing. So you don't want to bury all of your cash into the cost of a building and a lease. So most of you are out of your home. I think those even with buildings know that that's a major expense. So as you're getting started and trying to protect the cash of the business, you want to be considerate of that. Also, when you're looking at equipment investment, don't invest your whole nest egg or everything that you've built up for your business. You're going to need inventory. You're going to need money to market. You're going to need to ultimately pay people for stuff you're outsourcing for. There's going to be a lot of things in addition to just equipment that you need. So make sure you protect some of that cash and stay lean on your equipment investment. Yeah, you may be able to afford a $15,000 printer cutter today along with your heat press. But is that the right decision for your business? Do you even want to spend your time on that area of the business? Or would you rather order out for the logos and just heat press, or have everything decorated for you and just go market and sell? Decide that up front. And those are some of the main points I have here about the top challenges of startup decorators, or really any decorator, and how to fix them. We'll switch back to my cam here, and I'll stay on for a little while. Are there any additional questions, Jody?
Yes. When you say markets, what exactly do you mean?
When I say markets, I'm talking about exactly who you want to sell to. So when I think about devising a sales plan and a sales strategy, I think one of the most important things is to define your market. Yeah, so you have the whole human race, and then you have these specific markets of what people do that I want to target. So spirit wear or dance and cheer, that's a market. Reflective finishes tend to appeal to a market where I can go into safety and visibility. So police, fire, EMS, those sorts of things. There is a whole market that is workwear, corporate apparel, where I'm going after banks and different financial institutions, insurance companies, restaurants, and bars can be a market that I want to target. Athletics can be a market. So when I say market, that's what I mean. It's not as easy as just saying, hey, we have this, we're going to build a shop, and we're going to sell custom apparel to people. I really believe in picking a target and excelling kind of in that target market. Or it can be a collection of target markets, but I think you need to define how you appeal to each. It's not one size fits all.
All right, next question. If you don't really have a customer base, what I charge for art designing and weeding fee, I do not charge for overhead labor or art fees.
You still, even if you don't have a customer base, when you have an order, you need to charge for all components of the process. So the cost to manufacture or produce, which includes your materials and your labor. And then you have your indirect costs that are going to fall into your overhead, anything that doesn't go into the actual making of the product. So you need to incorporate all that. And from a customer standpoint, this is all sort of behind the screen to the customer, if you will. The customer just wants a price. I don't recommend saying, here's what you're going to pay for weeding and all this. They don't need to have to understand the production process all the time.
Next question. Setting up the website is my biggest challenge. What should it look like? I mean, it's a t-shirt. What can you do with it?
Okay, so setting up the website being a challenge. Yeah, I debated about throwing that slide in as well, but you can get pretty deep there with different solutions. So ultimately, you need to define what the goal of your website is. Is the goal of your website to actually take orders? In that case, you need an e-commerce site and a shopping cart, which is way to process payments. That's much more complex than just a website to generate interest in a phone call. So you have to sort of define, is my goal to take shirts on the site, or is my goal just to attract customers? And often, a website's good, but you can invest in like a templated website solution where you can simply design something that doesn't have e-commerce functionality to generate a phone call and ultimately process the order offline. So typically a website, you have to decide whether you're going to sell product or not. If you're not selling product, it's just about having good visuals that reflect what you can do for a customer and making sure once again, the markets that we talked about targeting, making sure you have sections that specifically speak to those markets and language they can understand. And if you want to have an e-commerce site, then you need to think about how easy is it to process. How will customers get art on the apparel or the item that they're purchasing? For those that just want a visual appearance, often I have a whole bunch of customers that just have a Facebook page and don't even have a website. They view Facebook kind of as a built tool where a lot of their customer base is depending on your market, and often it's easier to sort of recruit customers and engage with them on there and just post pictures of the type of stuff you're doing and ultimately generate emails and phone calls. What else do we have?
Last question. I'm having a hard time with getting going with work at home. So is going to a storefront better? Or what do you recommend to get started from home and build customers?
Yeah, so staying at home. So I always think of, I guess, my dad, what he used to tell me when I was a teenager, when I was, just turned 18 years old, and it's like, I want to move out. I want to buy a house. I'm going to New York City, whatever. I mean, I was aggressive, and I just wanted to go. All right, so when you think of a business owner, I think it's a similar mentality. You're aggressive and you just want to go and you want to change things and make it succeed. But the advice my dad used to always give me is stay rent-free for as long as possible. Okay, so getting a location is probably not going to fix your sales issues. There are plenty of places where you can go and conduct business. So find a local, Starbucks, Panera Bread, whatever it might be. Make yourself mobile. So keep debt-free by not having a location, keep payment-free, operate out of your home, let your website, your Facebook page kind of do the talking for you, and then set appointments to meet with people at different places where you can have good physical samples to flip through, invest in a laptop or a tablet where you can show looks and kind of converse with a customer there. I wouldn't recommend moving into a location before you have a good base of business built up unless you're just like, the foot traffic is ridiculous there, my customers walk by every day there, I need to be there, so they come in the door. That would be the only exception I can think of. And I'm sure those with storefront locations, can attest to the challenges of running locations. So in addition to just the expense, it's about having retail hours. If it's not just a production facility, it's about having the staff to actually man the hours, and there's a cost to that, even beyond the actual location, the electric, and all those things. So anyways, hopefully you get that we're about your business. We want to see you succeed. Hopefully you found some value in some of the tips offered here today. We're going to launch a short survey when you log out, and it's 3 questions. We hope you'll take the time to answer them. And thanks for watching Stahls TV. We have 2 classes tomorrow, one about making hair bows and one specifically about heat printing hats. So we'd invite you to sign up for those at stahlstv.com. I'm Josh Ellsworth. Thanks for watching.